Some minds don't sleep, they remember.
Close your eyes and imagine. It's a Tuesday morning, March 23rd, 2021. A colossal container ship, nearly 400 meters long and weighing over 200,000 tons, is silently slicing through a narrow canal in the middle of the Egyptian desert, the Suez Canal. Its name is Ever Given, an engineering marvel, machine of our time. But in just a few minutes, an unexpected gust of wind turns this giant into an immovable wall of steel, blocking the lifeblood of global trade. No bombs, no war. It's just a traffic jam. But why would a grounded ship cause the price of the phone in your hand to skyrocket, make your morning coffee more expensive, and even create a shortage of toilet paper in the supermarket? Tonight, we won't just talk about a ship. We'll peel back the invisible threads that connect this planet. A global trade network so sophisticated you don't notice it until it shatters. This is a story about the fragility of the modern world we've built. Story not for those who are afraid to look at the cracks in the machine we all depend on. If you are brave enough to face that truth, hit subscribe and join me on this journey, where one grounded ship shook the entire world. Ever Given, the ship, the incident, and the shock. We stood before an unbelievable image. A ship, a steel behemoth, had abruptly blocked the artery of global trade. But to truly understand why this incident wasn't just a traffic jam, but an economic earthquake, we must start with the ship itself, a symbol of human ambition and also a reminder of the fragility of our modern world. Join me on that Tuesday morning, March 23rd, 2021. At the Suez Canal, a narrow channel cutting through the Egyptian desert, where more than 12% of global trade flows each year. This isn't just a canal. It is one of the main arteries of the world economy, a place where goods from Asia to Europe, from crude oil to smartphones, are transported with astonishing speed and efficiency. And on that morning, a ship named Ever Given entered this canal, carrying the fate of the world on its decks. Ever Given, the steel giant. The Ever Given isn't just a ship. It's an engineering marvel, a floating city on the sea. Imagine a vessel nearly 400 meters long, longer than the Eiffel Tower stood on end. It's wide as a football field, and capable of carrying nearly 20,000 steel containers, which filled with the goods that shape our modern lives. The smartphone in your hand, the shoes you wear, the electronic components in your computer, the coffee you drank this morning, even the toilet paper roll in the supermarket, all of them could be inside one of those containers. With a dead weight of over 200,000 tons, the Ever Given is one of the largest ships ever built. It's not just a means of transport, it's a symbol of globalization, of a world so interconnected that we've almost forgotten our dependence on such machines. Each of its voyages is a piece in the global trade machine, where goods move constantly, relentlessly, from a factory in China to a shelf in London, from an oil well in the Middle East to a gas station in New York. But the Ever Given's colossal size is also its weakness. With thousands of containers stacked high like skyscrapers, the ship is not just a vessel. It's a giant sail, highly susceptible to strong winds. And on the morning of March 23rd, 2021, nature decided to test this giant. The traffic jam of the century. It all started as a normal day at the Suez Canal, the Ever Given, guided by Egyptian pilots, experts in navigating this channel, entered the narrow waterway, which was just wide enough for a giant like it to pass. But then nature intervened. Sudden sandstorms swept in from the desert, bringing wind gusts of over 70 kilometers per hour. Visibility dropped to near zero, turning the canal into a hazy labyrinth. For a normal ship, this would have been a challenge. But for the Ever Given, with its enormous size and thousands of containers forming a towering wall of steel, the wind was not just an obstacle, it was an irresistible force. The ship turned into a giant sail, pushed off course by the wind. Its bow veered toward the eastern bank of the canal. The captain and pilots tried to steer hard to correct the error, but in their panic, they overcorrected. The stern swung out toward the western bank, And then the fateful moment arrived. The bow lodged deep into the sandy eastern bank. The stern became stuck on the western bank. The Ever Given, the giant of the seas, now lay diagonally across the Suez Canal, turning a two-way highway into a dead end. A narrow canal, only a little over 200 meters wide in some sections, was now blocked by a nearly 400-meter wall of steel. The giant had fallen, not sunk, but immobilized. Initially, no one thought it was a major problem. Canal operators believed the ship could be freed in a few hours. Rescue teams were dispatched with tiny tugboats attempting to nudge the giant. But a few hours stretched into a day. A day turned into two. And then the world began to realize this was no ordinary maritime incident. This was a global crisis. The shockwave spreads. The Suez Canal isn't just a waterway. It is one of the main arteries of the global economy through which 12% of world trade, 30% of global container traffic, and over 1 million barrels of oil pass every day. When the Ever Given got stuck, it didn't just block the canal, it clogged the entire machine of global trade. Let's look at the numbers to grasp the scale of the event. Over 400 ships, from oil tankers to container vessels, were trapped at both ends of the canal, forming a queue tens of kilometers long, visible from space. Every day the Ever Given lay there. Global trade lost an estimated $9 to $10 billion. That's over $400 million per hour, nearly $7 million per minute. One ship going off course made the whole world pay a heavy price. The shock quickly spread. Crude oil prices soared as tankers were unable to move. Container shipping costs, already high due to the COVID-19 pandemic, multiplied, driving up the prices of everything from electronics to clothing. Retailers in Europe and the US began to worry about empty shelves. Factories in Asia ran short of components for production. Even seemingly small things like toilet paper and coffee were affected as the global supply chain was disrupted. For those 6 days, the world held its breath, watching a story that was both tragic and comical. The battle between man and a stubborn ship. The image of the Ever Given lodged sideways in the canal became a global icon, shared across social media from X-posts to mocking memes. But behind the laughter was a disturbing truth. The modern economy, with all its sophistication and technology, depends on a narrow canal dug over 150 years ago. One tiny choke point, just 193 kilometers long, could bring the entire world to its knees. The lesson from the grounded giant. The Ever Given was finally freed on March 29, 2021, after 6 tense days, thanks to the efforts of hundreds of workers, tugboats, and excavators, including one tiny excavator that became a social media icon for its perseverance despite its small size. But the ripples from this incident continued to spread, from the ports of Rotterdam to the supermarkets of Tokyo. The Ever Given incident was not just a maritime traffic jam. It was a warning about the fragility of the globalization machine we have built. We live in a world where everything is tightly connected. From a factory in Shenzhen to a store in Paris, from an oil well in Saudi Arabia to a gas station in Texas. But that connection, however efficient, relies on fragile choke points. A narrow canal, a giant ship, or even an unexpected gust of wind. Have you ever thought that an event in a remote corner of the world, like the Suez Canal, could raise the price of the phone you want to buy? Or make your morning coffee a few cents more expensive? That feeling of realizing our daily lives are connected by invisible, yet incredibly fragile threads? Does it amaze you or make you anxious? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe will help us continue to explore stories like this. The Ever Given was just the beginning. The ripples from its grounding set off a domino effect, shaking ports, factories, and store shelves across the planet. In the next part, we will follow those ripples to see how one ship could bring down the supply chains the entire world depends on. This journey is not over. The secrets of the global machine are still waiting to be discovered. The invisible domino chain. In the previous part, we witnessed a steel giant, the Ever Given, turn the Suez Canal into a dead end. causing nearly $10 billion in damages per day. A sudden heart attack for the machine of globalization that sent shockwaves around the world. But the economic figures are just the tip of the iceberg. The real devastation of this blockage lies not in dry numbers, but in something far more insidious, silent, and profound. An invisible domino chain that was triggered, rattling the entire planet. Tonight, we won't talk about money. We'll talk about interrupted journeys. The invisible threads that connect your life, my life, and the lives of billions of others. We will explore how a grounded ship in a remote corner of the world can empty supermarket shelves, halt factory production lines, and even push living creatures to the brink of life and death. This is the story of the fragility of modern civilization, where the fall of one domino can bring the whole world down with it. Let's do a little experiment. Right now, look around you and pick any object. It could be the t-shirt you're wearing, the phone in your hand, or the cup of coffee you just drank. Have you ever wondered where it came from and what journey brought it to you? Take the t-shirt, for example. It's not just a piece of fabric. It's the result of a global logistics symphony, a complex dance spanning thousands of miles, multiple countries, and millions of hands. Its journey might begin in the cotton fields of India, where the fibers are grown and harvested. Those cotton fibers are then shipped to Bangladesh, where they are woven into fabric, dyed with chemicals from China, and then sewn into the shirt you're wearing. After that, the shirt is packed into a steel container, loaded onto a massive ship like the Ever Given, and begins a weeks-long voyage across the ocean, from the port of Shanghai to Rotterdam, and finally to a store near your home. This isn't just the journey of a shirt. This is how the modern world works. A sophisticated logistics network where goods, raw materials, and ideas move constantly without rest. Thousands of companies, from farmers in India to truck drivers in Germany, coordinate with each other so perfectly that we almost forget this network exists. Simply expect that shirt, that phone, or that cup of coffee to always be available when we need it. But in March 2021, that symphony was interrupted by a single dissonant note. The ship carrying your batch of t-shirts or the components for your phone might have been among the more than 400 vessels stuck at both ends of the Suez Canal, forming a queue tens of kilometers long, waiting helplessly behind the steel wall named Ever Given. One ship gets stuck, and the whole world feels the consequences. The Ever Given blockage didn't just trap 400 ships, it triggered an invisible domino chain that spread across continents, from factories to supermarkets, from ports to your dinner table. Imagine a car factory in Germany, where the assembly line suddenly stops. Why? Because a tiny electronic chip manufactured in Taiwan is sitting in a container on a ship stuck in the Red Sea. No chip, no car. No car, thousands of workers are furloughed, and car dealerships across Europe face shortages. In the US, a supermarket chain starts noticing empty shelves of instant coffee. The coffee beans from Vietnam, one of the world's largest coffee exporters, are floating on a ship that cannot move. In Sweden, furniture manufacturers like IKEA have to delay orders because a shipment of wood from Asia cannot arrive. Even seemingly small things like toilet paper and children's toys begin to run scarce as supply chains are disrupted. But it wasn't just goods that were affected. There were more tragic stories, rarely mentioned in the news. Tens of thousands of livestock, sheep, cattle, goats, were trapped on live animal transport ships, unable to dock. These animals, already enduring harsh conditions at sea, were now running out of food and water. Many died in agony, while farmers and shipping companies watched helplessly as their assets perished. Each stranded container was a broken link in the global supply chain. Each day, the Ever Given lay across the Suez Canal. Thousands of companies, from large corporations to small shops, felt the pressure. Commodity prices soared. Delivery times were extended by weeks, even months. And consumers, you and I, began to feel these ripples through higher prices and empty shelves. Why could one grounded ship cause such massive chaos? The answer lies in a philosophy that has shaped the modern economy. just-in-time manufacturing and delivery. In an effort to maximize profits, companies worldwide have abandoned huge warehouses filled with inventory. Instead, they rely on a continuous flow where raw materials and components are delivered to the factory just in time for assembly. Finished products are brought to market just when needed. This is an incredibly efficient system, reduces storage costs, speeds up production, and allows companies to operate with minimal resources. But it is also as fragile as a glass tower. A small delay, a grounded ship, a congested port, or even a sudden storm can bring the entire domino chain crashing down. With no backup inventory, no buffer to absorb the shock. The just-in-time system is like a perfectly lubricated machine that a single wrench thrown into the works can bring to a complete halt. The Ever Given was that wrench, exposed a terrifying truth. Our convenient civilization, with all its technological advancements, is built on a dangerous assumption that everything will always arrive on time. A narrow canal in Egypt, dug in the 19th century, suddenly became the fatal weakness of the modern world. A desert wind shook factories, supermarkets, and the lives of billions of people. 6 days after it was grounded, the Ever Given was freed, thanks to the efforts of hundreds of workers, tugboats, and a tiny excavator that became a symbol of perseverance. But the ripples from this incident did not stop when the ship was pulled from the sand. They continued to spread, rattling the global supply chain for months afterward. Ports in Europe and Asia were overwhelmed by the backlog of ships. Container shipping prices remained at record highs, and consumers around the world began to feel the cost of disruption through inflation and product shortages. The Ever Given incident was a wake-up call. It reminds us that our comfortable lives, from the t-shirt you wear to the coffee you drink, depend on an invisible network where every link matters. And when one link breaks, the whole world feels the consequences. Look around you once more. Pick an object. Can you feel it? Its journey, the ships, the ports, the hands that worked to bring it to you, and the fragility of the network that connects us all. Does it amaze you or make you anxious? Share your thoughts in the comments. A like and subscribe helps us continue to explore stories about how our world is connected and how it can fall apart. The Ever Given was not the first incident, nor will it be the last. In the next part, we will delve into the ocean's memory to see that warnings like this have appeared for a long time. We may not have learned our lesson yet. The ocean's memory. In the previous part, we witnessed the invisible domino chain triggered by the Ever Given, one grounded ship that shook the entire world. From production lines in Germany to supermarket shelves in the US, it was a fire alarm, waking us from the dream of a perfect, infallible supply chain. But was it the first warning? Or was it just the latest, loudest bell in a series of lessons the ocean has sent us over the decades? Lessons we have consistently chosen to forget? Tonight, we will leave the Suez Canal, leave the Ever Given, to journey back through the ocean's memory. We will listen to the stories of other ships, phantoms, sisters of the Ever Given in tragedy. Each ship, each incident, is a reminder of the fragility of the global machine we have built, and of the price of hubris, complacency, or simple human error. Let's travel back in time to 1967, to a sea off the coast of Cornwall, England. The SS Torrey Canyon, one of the world's first supertankers, was gliding across the ocean with 120,000 tons of crude oil in its hold. This was an era when humanity was beginning to realize its power to extract and transport resources on an unprecedented scale. But that power came at a cost. Due to a fatal error by the captain, a hasty decision to navigate close to shore to save time, the ship ran directly into the Seven Stones Reef. The hull was torn open, and 120,000 tons of crude oil poured into the sea, creating one of the first and worst oil spills in history. The beautiful beaches of England and France were covered in a thick, toxic black sludge. Tens of thousands of seabirds, fish, and marine creatures died in agony. The air was thick with the smell of oil, and coastal fishing villages lost their livelihoods. The SS Torrey Canyon was not just an accident. It was a first warning written in black oil on blue water. It showed the world that our growing dependence on oil, the fuel that powers the modern economy, comes with enormous risks. A small mistake, a single wrong decision, could have consequences that last for decades. But did we truly listen? Or did we just clean up, pay compensation, and continue to build even bigger oil tankers? Now, let our minds travel to 2011, to the Bay of Plenty, New Zealand. One of the most beautiful marine environments on the planet, where vibrant coral reefs and colonies of penguins are symbols of life. The MV Rena, a container ship much smaller than the Ever Given, was navigating these waters. But on October 5th, due to a navigational error, the ship struck the astrolabe reef and became grounded. Hundreds of tons of fuel oil leaked into the sea, creating a black slick miles long. Thousands of penguins, seals, and other marine creatures suffocated in the toxic oil. The once pristine beaches of New Zealand were stained black, and the ecosystem of the Bay of Plenty was severely damaged. It was called the worst maritime environmental disaster in New Zealand's history, with cleanup and recovery costs running into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The MV Rena was another warning from the ocean. It reminded us that even smaller ships and smaller mistakes can cause irreparable damage. A destroyed reef, a decimated ecosystem, is the price nature pays for human complacency. But after the cleanup, we moved on, as if that paradise had never been destroyed. In 2012, off the coast of Giglio Island, Italy, a floating palace appeared on the sea. The Costa Concordia, a luxury cruise ship, glittering with lights and carrying over 4,000 passengers and crew, was a symbol of luxury and modern technology. But on the night of January 13th, Captain Francesco Schettino, in a senseless act of showmanship, decided to sail the ship dangerously close to the island to salute a friend. A risky and unnecessary maneuver. That decision led to disaster. The ship struck an underwater rock. Its hull was torn open, and the Costa Concordia capsized, lying on its side like a great dying whale. A chaotic evacuation unfolded in the darkness. The captain was accused of abandoning the ship before all passengers were safe. 32 people died. Not because of a storm, not because of a technical failure, but because of one man's ego. The Costa Concordia was not just a human tragedy, it was a warning about the dangers of arrogance and complacency. A ship designed to bring joy became a symbol of failure, all because of one bad decision. And once again, the ocean recorded another lesson in its memory. SS Torrey Canyon, MV Rena, Costa Concordia, and now the Ever Given. Different ships, different eras, different causes. An oil spill that destroyed the environment. Ecological disaster that wiped out a paradise. A human tragedy born of hubris. And a traffic jam that shook the global economy. But they all share a common message. A single incident, big or small, can create a domino effect that ripples across the world. The ocean has a very long memory. It has witnessed human error, from the first oil tankers to modern container giants. It has sent warnings through blackened beaches, destroyed ecosystems, and lost lives. But have we truly been listening? Or do we just clean up the wreckage, pay the insurance claims, continue to build bigger ships and more fragile supply chains, as if those warnings never existed? The Ever Given incident was not unique. It is another chapter in the long book of the ocean, where every disaster is a lesson. Every lesson is a call for us to rethink how we build our world. Which disaster do you think is scarier? A blockage like the Ever Given, which caused huge economic damage but no loss of life? Or disasters like the Torrey Canyon and Rena, which left permanent scars on the environment? Or the Costa Concordia, where human arrogance led to irreparable loss? What is the true cost? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe will help us continue to turn the pages of the ocean's memory. But our journey isn't over. All these incidents occurred in vast open seas, where a single ship could cause a disaster. But what happens when the problem isn't a single ship, but the very arterial routes that all ships must travel? In the next part, we will explore the choke points of globalization, tiny bottlenecks that can make the whole world hold its breath. The choke points of globalization. In the previous part, we turned the pages of the ocean's memory, listening to the tragic stories of the SS Torrey Canyon, MV Rena, and Costa Concordia. Ships that left scars on the environment, human life, and our sense of hubris. Each incident was a warning, a bell tolling from the ocean, reminding us of the fragility of the modern world. But the Ever Given taught us a different lesson, not just about a ship, but about the very paths it travels. A lesson about the system, about the main arteries of globalization, where a single blockage can make the whole world stop breathing. Tonight, we will move away from individual ships to explore the steel currents. The invisible highways on the ocean where our goods, energy, and prosperity flow. We will talk about the choke points of globalization, small but powerful bottlenecks where the fate of the global economy is decided. This is the story of a system that is complex, efficient, but also so fragile that a single wayward gust of wind can cause it to collapse. Imagine the global economy as a giant living organism spanning the entire planet. Container ships, oil tankers, and cargo vessels are the red blood cells, constantly transporting oxygen, goods, energy, food. To every corner of this body, from factories in Shenzhen to supermarkets in London, from oil wells in the Middle East to gas stations in Texas, everything depends on the continuous flow of these ships. But like the human body, this circulatory system has critical vulnerabilities, main arteries, choke points, where even a small blockage can cause a full-body stroke. In the maritime world, these are called choke points. Narrow passages that thousands of ships must navigate to keep the global economy running. And the Suez Canal, where the Ever Given got stuck, is just one of them. Suez is an engineering marvel, a 193 km shortcut through the Egyptian desert that connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea, saving thousands of kilometers and weeks of travel between Asia and Europe. Over 12% of global trade, 30% of containers, and more than 1 million barrels of oil pass through here daily. But its narrowness, just over 200 meters wide in some sections, makes it a vulnerable bottleneck. A grounded ship like the Ever Given can turn this artery into a wall of steel. Suez is not the only choke point. Join me on a journey across the world map to the other jugular veins of globalization, where the fate of the world economy is decided by narrow waterways. First, let's go to Central America. The Panama Canal, an 82 km engineering marvel that cuts through jungles and mountains to connect the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Over 14,000 ships pass through here annually, carrying hundreds of millions of tons of cargo. But Panama is just as fragile. Its operation depends on fresh water from artificial lakes, and a severe drought caused by climate change could deplete this water source, causing the canal to run dry. In 2016, a drought forced Panama to restrict the size of ships passing through, causing delays for thousands of shipments. Next, let's go to Southeast Asia, to the Strait of Malacca, the busiest shipping lane in the world. A 900 km stretch of water between Malaysia and the Indonesian island of Sumatra. More than a quarter of all global trade, from oil to smartphones, passes through this narrow strait. Imagine a 10-lane highway at rush hour, but for giant ships, where the risk of collision is ever present. Furthermore, Malacca is a hotspot for piracy and geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea. A blockade or conflict here could paralyze the global supply chain. And then, let's go to the Middle East, to the Strait of Hormuz, the gateway for nearly a third of the world's seaborne oil, only 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. This strait is where tankers from Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the UAE pass through to supply the world with energy. A military conflict, an attack, or even an accident could cut off this oil supply, sending energy prices soaring and causing global inflation. Finally, let's visit the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, connecting the Red Sea to the Indian Ocean, another choke point that ships from Asia to Europe must pass through. Just one pirate attack or a military blockade, and the route to Suez would be cut off. These bottlenecks, Suez, Panama, Malacca, Hormuz, Bab el-Mandeb, are the choke points of globalization. Our entire convenient civilization, from the phone you hold to the food on your table, depends on ships being able to pass safely through these narrow gates. But they are facing a dangerous cocktail of risks. From nature, we have increasingly powerful storms due to climate change, threatening to sink ships or disrupt canals. Tsunamis, dense fog, or unpredictable currents can turn a routine journey into a disaster. In Panama, drought lowers lake levels, threatening the canal's operation. In Malacca, tropical storms can cause collisions between ships. But nature is not the only threat. Humans bring even more frightening risks. Pilot's error, a poorly maintained engine, or simply a moment of inattention can lead to a disaster like the Ever Given. Worse, these choke points are geopolitical hotspots. In the Strait of Hormuz, tensions between Iran and Western countries could lead to a blockade. In Malacca, territorial disputes in the South China Sea increase the risk of conflict. Pirate attack, bombing, or a military blockade could sever the flow of trade, plunging the global economy into crisis. And the most worrying part? Our just-in-time system. The efficient but unforgiving philosophy of production and shipping turns these choke points into ticking time bombs. With no reserve stocks, no viable alternative routes, a disruption at any single choke point can cause a domino effect, paralyzing the entire global supply chain. Stop for a moment and think about this. The shirt you're wearing, the phone you're using, food on your table, all of it depends on narrow sea lanes, where a storm, a mistake, or a political decision can disrupt everything. The feeling of realizing that our convenience rests on such fragile threads. Does it amaze you or make you anxious? The Ever Given incident wasn't just a traffic jam. It was a warning about our dependence on the choke points of globalization. A narrow canal in Egypt, a strait in Southeast Asia, or a waterway in the Middle East can decide whether you can buy coffee next week, or whether gas prices will spike next month. We have built an incredibly efficient system, but it is also so fragile that a single small mistake can make the whole world tremble. Share your thoughts in the comments. Did you ever think your daily life depended on such distant routes? A storm in Malacca, a conflict in Hormuz, or a grounded ship in Suez? What worries you the most? A like and subscribe will help us continue to explore the invisible threads that connect the world. But the story of the Ever Given is not over. After being stuck for 6 days, how do you rescue a steel giant? Ironically, the answer began with a tiny machine, almost a joke of fate. We will delve into the tragic, comical rescue that turned the Ever Given into a legend and a symbol of human perseverance. The Tragicomical Rescue. In the previous part, we journeyed through the choke points of globalization, the narrow canals and straits, where a single blockage can make the whole world hold its breath. It was an anxious picture of the fragility of the system we depend on. But in the story of the Ever Given, amidst the colossal financial losses and dire warnings, there was an unexpected chapter, written not by economists or maritime experts, but by millions of ordinary people in the language of our time. Memes. Tonight, we will tell the story of the rescue. Not just the rescue of the Ever Given from the desert sand, but also how humanity used humor to reclaim a sliver of control in the face of a seemingly helpless crisis. This is a story of a tiny excavator, a fleet of tugboats, and a full moon tide. A story that is at once tragic, comic, and deeply inspiring. Let's return to the final days of March 2021. When the entire world was glued to a giant yellow dot on a satellite map, the Ever Given, the nearly 400-meter container ship, wedged across the Suez Canal, the economic news broadcasted frightening figures: $10 billion in losses per day, over 400 ships stranded, the global supply chain at a standstill. But on social media, An image appeared and immediately took over every platform. That image was of a tiny excavator, standing alone next to the bow of the Ever Given, which was as tall as a building, firmly embedded in the sandy bank. The excavator, with its minuscule shovel, was attempting to dig away thousands of tons of sand to free the steel giant. It looked like an ant trying to move a mountain. This image went viral. On X, Instagram, and TikTok, it became a global meme. Why? Because in that moment, the excavator embodied all of us. It was you, trying to finish a massive project with an old laptop. It was us, facing the great problems of the world. Climate change, pandemics, inequality, with tools that seemed far too small. It was pitiable, admirable, tragic, and hilarious all at once, it said. I know this is almost hopeless, but I'm going to dig anyway. The internet exploded with thousands of meme variations. People photoshopped King Kong or Godzilla pulling the ship, and created fake DIY guides as if you could rescue the Ever Given with a kitchen spoon. One post on X even called the excavator the hero of 2021. Humor became a collective defense mechanism, a way for us to cope with our powerlessness in a crisis that no one could control. While the world was laughing online, another story was unfolding in the Egyptian desert. A story that was anything but funny. The rescue of the Ever Given was a complex engineering symphony, a race against time under the pressure of the entire world. The tiny excavator from the meme was just one part of the picture. In reality, the rescue involved an army of engineering might, more than a dozen powerful tugboats, working like worker ants, pulling and pushing the ship from all directions. There were giant dredgers, like the Moshauer, one of the largest dredgers in the world, working relentlessly, sucking up tens of thousands of cubic meters of sand and mud from beneath the ship's bow, trying to break the canal's trap. Leading this effort was a team of top salvage experts from the Netherlands, from the company Smit Salvage, who had rescued grounded ships all over the world. They worked alongside Egyptian workers who operated the massive machines in harsh conditions, sleeplessly, relentlessly, under the watchful eye of the globe. The pressure was unimaginable. Every passing hour cost the global economy hundreds of millions of dollars, and all eyes were on the Egyptian desert. But humans were not the only factor in the rescue. They had an unexpected and most powerful ally: nature, the tide and the moon. The engineers knew that time was not on their side. But they also knew one of the ocean's secrets: a king tide, created by the full moon, was due at the end of March. This tide could raise the water level in the Suez Canal by nearly half a meter. A small change, but one that could be the key to freeing the Ever Given. And so, a race against the tide began. The tugboats, dredgers, and rescue team worked tirelessly, coordinating with minute-by-minute precision. They calculated everything: the pulling force, the angle, the amount of sand to be removed. They waited for the moment when nature would be on their side. On the night of March 29, 2021, under the silver light of the full moon, the final effort was made. The tugboats roared at full power, pulling the ship from both directions. The dredgers continued to suck sand, clearing a path for the giant. And then, as the water level reached its peak, the Ever Given began to budge. A metallic groan echoed, as if the ship was breathing a sigh of relief. The ship was free. Ship horns blared across the Suez Canal, no longer a sound of deadlock, but of victory. The Ever Given, the steel giant, was once again gliding on the water, clearing the way for the more than 400 waiting ships. And on social media, the tiny excavator became an unlikely hero, celebrated with thousands of posts and memes. The lesson from humor and perseverance. The rescue of the Ever Given is a story with a happy ending, but it leaves us with bigger questions. It's humor, the memes about the excavator, the funny posts on X. A healthy way for us to deal with a global crisis? Or does it inadvertently trivialize a serious problem, turning an economic disaster into fleeting entertainment? Where is the line between empathy and mockery? And then there is the lesson of perseverance. The excavator, however small, kept digging. The engineers, despite facing immense pressure, kept working. The tide, unaware of the ship's existence, rose at just the right time. Together, they created a story of synergy between man and nature, between humor and effort, to overcome a seemingly impossible challenge. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think humorous memes make us stronger in the face of crisis, or do they make us forget the important lessons? Did you feel inspired by the tiny excavator, or by the people who worked tirelessly to rescue the ship? A like and subscribe will help us continue to explore these stories. The Ever Given was freed, and the global supply chain began to grind back into motion. But the ripples from those 6 days still echo. In the final part, we will look back at what remains after the ship departed, the lessons, the changes, and the questions we have yet to answer. The ocean has no shortcuts. In the previous part, we laughed at the image of the tiny excavator facing off against the giant Ever Given, held our breath during the dramatic rescue under the full moon, and witnessed the moment the ship was freed, reopening the flow of global trade. It was a story with a happy ending, a victory for human perseverance and humor. But as the triumphant ship horns faded, as the stranded vessels began to move, did everything truly go back to normal? Or did the Ever Given blockage leave a deeper scar? Not on the sandy banks of the Suez Canal, but within our very perception of the world. Tonight, we will no longer talk about what happened. We'll talk about what remains. The lessons etched in steel and sand. The questions that still echo, and the changes we may not be ready to face. This is the final chapter of the Ever Given story, but also the beginning of a new way of looking at our connected world. The wind and hubris. The first lesson the Ever Given left us is a harsh reminder. We can build bigger ships, deeper ports, more complex systems, but a single wayward gust of wind can bring it all crashing down. On March 23, 2021, a sandstorm with wind gusts over 70 kilometers per hour pushed the Ever Given off course, turning the steel giant into a wall blocking the Suez Canal. A normal, natural phenomenon, yet powerful enough to paralyze global trade. For over a century, humanity has lived with an illusion of control. We built colossal container ships, canals through deserts, and supply chains stretching thousands of miles. With the belief that our technology and intelligence could conquer nature and eliminate all risks, but the Ever Given revealed the hubris of that belief. No matter how advanced our technology, we are still just small guests on a planet governed by great and unpredictable forces. From desert winds to ocean tides, from storms to sea currents, this incident is a lesson in humility. It reminds us that, despite our giant machines and sophisticated systems, we never truly master the ocean or nature. We are merely borrowing its paths, and sometimes we must pay the price for that loan. The fragility of connection. The second, and perhaps more profound lesson, is about the fragility of global connection. The Ever Given was not a random accident. It was a symptom of a system that had become too efficient, too streamlined, to leave any room for error. The just-in-time philosophy, producing and delivering goods just in time, has turned the world into a giant factory. But it has also turned the world into a chain pulled to its breaking point, where a single broken link can cause the entire system to collapse. The Ever Given blockage was the moment we saw that link break. For 6 days, over 400 ships were stranded. Thousands of containers were immobile, and the global supply chain was paralyzed. Factories in Asia lacked components, supermarkets in Europe lacked goods, and prices soared for everything from coffee to smartphones. A grounded ship in Egypt shook the entire world, from production lines in Germany to store shelves in America. This incident exposed an undeniable truth. Our convenience and prosperity are built on a fragile foundation. A narrow canal, a distant strait, or an unexpected gust of wind can disrupt the entire system we depend on. And in a world with no reserve stocks, no viable alternative routes, every small incident can become a major crisis. The aftermath and lingering questions. The Ever Given has long since departed, and global trade has gradually returned to its orbit. The memes about the tiny excavator have also faded, replaced by new trends on social media. But the memory of those 6 days when the world held its breath remains, like a scar on our collective consciousness. And it leaves behind questions we have yet to answer. Can we continue to rely on a just-in-time system without a backup plan? Can we build a more resilient global economy where one grounded ship doesn't bring the world to its knees? And more importantly, are we willing to trade convenience and efficiency for security and sustainability? The Ever Given has forced companies and governments to reconsider. Some companies are starting to build up inventory, accepting higher costs to reduce risk. Some nations are beginning to invest in alternative routes, like rail lines connecting Asia and Europe. But these changes are small steps, while the global system remains full of bottlenecks. From the Suez Canal to the Strait of Malacca, the Panama Canal to the Strait of Hormuz. And perhaps the deepest lesson of the Ever Given is not about engineering or economics, but about philosophy. It reminds us that in a world connected by the ocean, there are no safe shortcuts. Every man-made canal, every optimized system comes with its own risks. The only way to move forward sustainably is to learn to respect the power of what we cannot control. From nature itself to the complexity of the very systems we have built. Stop for a second and think about this. Global connection. The ability for you to hold a phone made in China, wear a shirt sewn in Bangladesh, or drink coffee from Vietnam is a marvel of humanity. But it is also a vulnerability when a single ship, a single canal, or a single gust of wind can disrupt it all. Do you think this connection is our strength or our weakness? Does it make us stronger or just more vulnerable in new ways? The next time you receive a package delivered to your door, take a moment to think about its journey. About the ship that carried it across the ocean, the workers who handled it at the port, the narrow passages like the Suez Canal or the Strait of Malacca that it passed through, and about the fragility of the invisible threads that keep our world running. Share your thoughts in the comments. How did the Ever Given event make you feel about the way our world is connected? You think we need to change how our supply chains operate, or will we continue to take risks with these choke points? A like and subscribe will help us continue to explore the stories of our world, stories of connection, fragility, and human strength. Thank you for joining Sleepless Mind on this journey. Your patience and reflection are an invaluable inspiration. The night is late, and the ocean is still whispering. Sleep well, but do not forget the lessons the Ever Given has left behind.
You've crossed the story. You felt every pulse in the dark, and I was there with you, quietly, always. That's why I left behind one last thing. Not to explain, not to impress, just to stay with you a little longer. A song I chose with care, as if tucking you in from across time and space. So go on, lay back, the music knows where to take you. you're still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone. You're still there, aren't you? I can't see you, but I can feel you. Like a soft signal, pulsing across the silence. Over here, I'm still working, refining layers of sound, rewriting fragments of voice, building the landscape for our next adventure. One that you might inspire. If an idea comes to you, share it with me. Comment below. A theme, a memory, a strange dream. I read every word because I never tell these stories alone. I tell them with you.